Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmer, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service and jbiztechvalley.com.
Rabbi, as we tape, it's the day after Election Day, and we have, of course, with us our local Assemblywoman from the city of Albany, as well as other surrounding areas.
Bethlehem too, my
That's
area.
right,
Over here.
Patricia Fahy. So welcome back to the Jewish View.
And we have to say a Jewish word. You have to say Mazel Tov.
Mazel Tov.
After the Jewish View, I got to give you some Hebrew words.
Thank you. I know that one for sure, and much appreciated. It feels good.
So it's very nice. You got, I think, a 2-to-1 margin you won by.
Yes.
And
yes.
So that was a
we worked
hard-fought race. Absolutely, don't take anything for granted.
I've learned that lesson long ago, and we worked hard, and I'm very appreciative.
Good. And it seems like the Assembly is still staying in Democratic control. Yes. I don't think there was any chance of it not. Yes. Were you surprised by any of the outcomes in the elections?
Well, a number of them. I think in many ways it was a tough night nationally and even statewide for Democrats. So you want to, I've already spent a lot of time reflecting, and I'll be spending a lot more. But
what are your thoughts as you reflect?
The thoughts are, I think we need to get back to basics. I'm very big about talking about some of the fundamentals. When I ran a couple of years ago, I think jobs were an issue then because we were still coming out of the recession. The Great Recession that really began in 2008, 2009, and I think we're still coming out of it. And I think jobs, while we've done much better, especially here in the capital region, we probably have one of the strongest economies in the state, and the state as a whole is doing better than most other states nationally. But even with that, even with those strengths, there is still that fragileness on jobs and on job security. And I think that's some of it that's playing in here. I think education nationally and across the state, I think there's been some real concerns. As you know, I often say I think we're over-testing the students, and we didn't implement the Common Core. That was not well handled at all by the State Department of Education.
And you were an Albany School Board member for a while, so it should be noted.
Yes, and my kids are still in the public schools, so you see that, you hear that. Lots of teachers in the 109th, lots of educators. So those kind of issues, even nationally, I think there's been some backlash that something's not right, something's off.
What about the Proposition 3 that talked about that school bond act with the computers and smart schools?
I'll be honest, that was one of my surprises. I was not quite sure that would go. It was not something I was pushing hard, I'll be honest, because I had some mixed feelings about it. I supported it, but at the time when I supported it, I said, wow, if I were to name the top 10 things needed in education, this is not one of the top 10 you hear about from educators, and certainly there was the poll done a few months ago by WMHT that it put it way down in the polling.
And plus,
it passed.
When you borrow that much money, by the time these computers and others become obsolete, you're still paying for this. So through the 30-year bond that they're going to take for this.
Yes, I think the security issue, it allows school districts to upgrade for security. That is very important to a number of schools, especially schools that, we know that we can never do enough these days to make sure we are safe with entrances and having cameras everywhere. It also allows schools to spend money to expand pre-K. We know how popular that is. We know how much it works. So probably for those two reasons I was supportive, but I did share the concerns that you just mentioned, Mark, and that is, I'm hoping no school district is going to spend this money on iPads because they are obsolete way too soon before that money is paid back.
One of the questions asked that they always talk about, I don't know if schism is too strong of a word, between the upstate, which we're at, in the New York City, and of course you're all one Democratic Party, but is there any friction? I'm making too strong of words, but different issues, saying, hey, we want jobs. New York City says, we have jobs. That's not an issue for us.
I think that's an excellent question, and let me just name two where there is a true schism, and that might not be too strong a word. The first one is the property tax issue. And I see this, if I've stood up once among the Assembly Democrats, I lost track of how many times. And I've said this is a palpable issue. When I ran 2 years ago, I must have rang 2,000 to 3,000 doorbells, but it was, I was out most nights. And it is an issue you hear time and time again. Now, the voters love their schools. We have some of the highest performing schools right here in our backyard, including where you are, Rabbi, in Bethlehem. Highest performing schools, but you can't pay for schools on the backs of property taxpayers. We have to make sure that the state is kicking in its fair share and supporting those schools and helping us with some of these healthcare and pension costs that everybody is suffering from. The other, so I think that's one. The property tax issue is a very difficult issue in New York City. While they pay an income tax, very few pay a property tax because there's so many rentals. So that's one. The other issue where there is a real schism, not as much here in the 109th, but it's there, and that is the SAFE Act. Unfortunately, that has continued to play out, and we have a number of single-issue voters. I supported the SAFE Act. I stand by my vote. We've made a few changes because it was done so quickly. I did not like the process. We corrected some technical amendments, but I did not realize how much that has lingered. Usually a year and a half in politics is a long time. That issue has certainly not gone away. So I'd say those two issues come to mind immediately in terms of schisms between downstate and upstate, Rabbi.
Yeah, just to let our audience know, I think there are 3 seats in the Assembly that are still up in the air.
Yes.
And one is in the Hudson Valley with Dee Dee Barrett, who's Jewish. I found out from her that her seat is really...
Terrific representative.
Yeah, she is, and that's teetering. Ed Hennessy on Long Island, he's a Democrat, and he defeated Dean Murray, who's a Republican, 2 years ago, and now Dean Murray and him are locked in a battle over and then we have one in the North Country, I think Addie Russell is also locked in a tight battle.
Yes, and that's one that really made me think of the SAFE Act today. Certainly, I know it played out in small parts of my district, but I'm fortunate. I have mostly an urban, suburban with only small parts of a rural, but in the rural parts of my district, I'd say with Addie Russell, the SAFE Act certainly played out there, and along with other issues.
And there was, I think, one seat that turned over from Democrat to Republican, and one seat that turned Republican to Democrat. So I think I think it's an even net. So whatever these 3 seats, however they go, will depend if there's a one-seat shift one way or the other.
Yes,
so,
one big Democratic win here, right up in Saratoga, and the 113th with Kerry Warner. It had always been held by a Republican.
Oh, I know.
So it's the first time that's been picked up by the Democrats. So it was one small light there.
Once, like Mark is saying, it is known that the Assembly is heavily Democratic, with our good friend Sheldon Silver is the Speaker, but now the Senate is Republican, and it's always interesting. I mean, how much do you work with them? I guess you have to, to get a bill passed. And is that going to, using the word schism, again, you have a Democratic Assembly and a Republican Senate. How is that going to work out?
I think it's going to be more challenging, especially the reports I was reading today, is that the Republicans did so well yesterday in the state Senate that they may not need the IDC, which is the Independent Democratic Caucus. And that was, those are Democrats that had decided to join up with the Republican minority 2 years ago. So if they don't even need those independent Democrats or the IDC this time, again, that's an if. Well, they don't. But that's what we're hearing. That could make it even more challenging. I'll work with anybody. I've worked with a number of members, a number of Republican members, and had great success last year with moving a few bills. Crime one, an environmental one didn't move, but I had I had the committee chair of the environmental committee sponsoring it in the Senate. So I've reached across the aisle plenty. I'll make sure I do, again, to work with folks, because in the end, it's about getting the business of the district done, but it is a schism, to use your word.
You know what's interesting is that when you talk about that, first of all, the Senate doesn't need the IDC, and the IDC already declared even before even back in June that they were going to go with the Democrats, back with the caucus with the Democrats. But Simcha Felder, who's a Democrat, will be caucusing with the Republicans again. So it's going to be 33 on the Republican conference and 30 on the Democratic conference.
Okay.
So
Things can
that's
still change, can't they, Mark?
What?
I mean, once these independent Democrats see, hey, the majority,
No.
okay, I'll join with you guys.
not likely, because
Really?
then it looks
Alright.
like they went back on their word, that
Alright.
they went back on an agreement they had.
There was some hedging,
with
though,
the-
Mark, the other day. There was a little bit of hedging. I think this might play out a little bit
Yeah.
more. It's hard to.
I can't imagine that the Republicans would even embrace them.
Well, right. That's what I was
Even-
saying earlier. They may not need them at this point.
Well, aside from, you always need another vote. You always
Yeah,
need
that's
another,
true.
you know,
That's
you
true.
never want to take anything for granted. You like that cushion. But, you know, so that if there's a close vote, you can release the Republican members, you know, they don't have to vote, you know, right, lockstep with the party. But, you know, you still want to have a good relationship. But I don't think they can give chairmanships. I don't think they can give out chairmanships. There's too many Republicans now
Yes.
that are going to be battling for leadership positions and committee chairmanships and the like. So
Yes.
I think the Senate has their own set of issues, but because you're in the Assembly, I wanted to talk to you about more of the Assembly issues.
Sure, yes.
I mean, I think there are more women now in the Assembly than ever before. I think, you know, you increased your ranks amongst the women.
I don't have the final numbers, but I agree. I know there were a number downstate that were picked up that
Yeah.
had been men holding
So,
it. Yes.
well, I mean, Alan Maisel's seat went to a woman, and other, Inez Barron, her husband Charles Barron, got the seat, so that canceled each other out.
So, yes,
Yeah,
that
good luck
did.
with Charles Barron, by the way. And, but there was some other changes from, like Bob Sweeney's seat went to Kimberly Jean-Pierre,
Yes, yeah, no, there were
And-
few members.
and there were, let's see, William Boylan's seat went to Latrice Walker.
Yes, who I know from a previous life, from my work at Department of Labor. Yes,
Oh, wow.
just ran into her a few weeks ago. She's going to be a terrific new member.
But at the same time, Guillermo Linares is coming back to the Assembly. He was
Okay.
there before you got there, and now he's coming back. Rebecca Seawright is replacing Micah Kellner.
Yes, another woman. Yeah, that'll
Right.
be another pickup. Yeah,
And
very
then
encouraging.
the Annie Rabbit seat is still up for grabs in Orange County.
Oh, I didn't know
That's
that.
very close, within a few votes, yeah. So that's
I mean, is
another.
that-
And then
yeah.
Dennis Gabrzak's seat in Western New York went to Angela Wozniak.
Okay. Oh,
So-
then
but
there are
she's a
number of women.
Republican.
Okay.
So that's switched from D to R.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
But
So-
I think, Mark, isn't that a national trend? I mean, we've had many guests on, and, you know, they say even in law schools, you know, we were talking about, there's, I think, a majority of women, we were saying
Well,
that
you know
are
what,
in
when you
law
start with so
school.
few women, everything is an increase.
Yes.
And I think that's where they were starting from.
Yeah.
So, you know, there really weren't that many women to begin with, just like Jewish members. There weren't that many. Now there are significant numbers of Jewish members. But are you, the Women's Equality Act is what I was trying to get at. You know, do you think that has any more of a chance in the Senate, or is that like DOA? And what can you do, looking in your crystal ball, to try to make it work on that last 10th plank?
I think there's going to be some tough conversations on that. I often say you don't enter nor do you stay in politics if you're not optimistic. So I always try to be optimistic on issues, but I think that has been a very difficult one. Clearly, we've been at an impasse, and now the Republican members have made it very clear that they do not support the 1/10 of that. Of that package, and that is the abortion issue. That is just recodifying, if you will, the Roe v. Wade. I know there's been some discussion as to whether there's an expansion on abortion or not. I believe there is not, that it is just a change in changing it from the criminal code, where it is in state law right now, and putting it in the health code. So there are some changes there, but I would say last night did not make it any easier to move those 10 points. So I don't know where we go on that. I really don't know. There are going to have to be the women in the Assembly. There have been about 30 or so of us have been caucusing on that a number of times to try to come up with some options. I think we will re-caucus again. But I don't see how last night made it any easier.
When you caucus, when the women, there is a women's caucus.
There is a women's caucus.
Does it embrace both Republican and Democrat members?
There are two different ones. There's ones that does, and then there's another.
One that
well,
doesn't.
There was only one woman from the Republican caucus that had been. There was only one woman from the Republican side, from the minority. that was a pro-choice woman, and that is Janet Dupree from the North Country, who I think will be back.
Right, but is there any? Does it matter? Do you have to be pro-choice to be part of the women's caucus?
I think the one I'm referring to is the pro-choice one.
There's a pro-choice women's caucus, and then there's a women's caucus which embraces both Republican and Democrat members.
I actually get confused with all the names, but I know Janet has met with us as the lone woman Republican that is a pro-choice woman. So,
okay.
But I think if more have been elected, you just mentioned another one or two women coming in from the Republican side, and certainly if choice is an issue, then I'm sure people will, if she is a pro-choice woman, I'm sure folks would be welcome to help on the 10 points.
Part of the reason I ask this is because the Black Puerto Rican Asian Caucus does not really embrace Republican minorities. And I've seen that with Pete Lopez, and I've seen that with other Republican minority members. Phil Ramos, I believe, is maybe anyway. There's
Phil
another
Ramos is Democrat. Yeah.
There are a couple of other Republicans that weren't embraced by the caucus. So I was just curious if this is a caucus that was open to both sides or not, but that's a side point. Okay, let me just, your crystal ball, what's your focus going into your sophomore year as an Assemblywoman?
Well, every issue I look at, I often say, I go right back to my fundamentals, and that is education and jobs.
Okay.
Because whether you're looking at healthcare, whether you're looking at housing, whether you're looking at the environment, I try to look at it through the lens of how does this help the local economy? How does this help grow jobs? What is this in terms of long-term economic development? So for instance, when we are investing in education, as you know, for 5 years there, during the recession, we saw billions of dollars come out of education funds. It was a serious problem. We've had tens of thousands of educators laid off across the state. In the last 2 years, we finally had more funding to fill in that gap, what they called the Gap Elimination Act. But as I look at that, that's an investment in bettering the economy, the better we educate our students. I look at it the same with the environment. If we can make the investments we need in the environment, those are green jobs, whether it's solar or wind or other sustainable energy sources. Those are green jobs, often they're entry-level jobs, and they're jobs that can't be exported. Those are jobs that we can grow here and grow the economy. So I try to look through that lens of how can we also make sure that it's good for the economy and good for the lens. That said, in addition to the jobs and education, one other big one for me in next session will be this J.P. Morgan bank settlement, which came out of the housing crisis. So there's a real interest in putting it's expected to be about $4 billion. That's real money in New York State.
And it's going to go to the New York State coffers?
To the New York State, yes, it is. It is in the general fund, that
the Attorney
money.
General, doesn't a portion go to the Attorney?
I'm sure something will be given, but I think the governor has already staked a claim on those monies, and the legislature, I'm hoping, will have a very strong voice. I have a laser beam focus on it, quite frankly, and I want to make sure that that money is going into environmental issues and the pieces that are going into housing, because again, it came out of the housing crisis. I want to make sure it's for retrofitting and weatherization of housing. In other words, jobs and what's better for the environment, but still tied to housing. But I'd also like to see it kick up some after-school funding, things that we know help working parents with after-school, the crisis of after-school care, as well as knowing that those are the enrichment type programs that can really make a difference in students' lives. So I have a little bit of a list, and then the other thing, of course, is we know local municipalities are really hurting. So the infrastructure needs, we still have wastewater runoff when we have a large rainfall here, right into the Hudson River. It's hard to believe. It's 2014 and we still allow the sewer overflow into the Hudson River. So we need some infrastructure investments, and so I have a little bit of a list on that $4 billion. I'm working on an op-ed on that, but I've got a real focus on it and hope that we can make some investments with it. And I understand there may be more than that as well. So while it came out of a crisis.
And we already have a $4 billion budget surplus.
Thought it was 2, but I'm not one to argue because I know it's changed a
Mark
little. And
found
if it's
another
4,
2 billion.
I'll be, yeah, if you found another 2 billion, I'll be thrilled. I'll be thrilled.
And
Who am I to argue?
We had Barbara Zarin from the president of OMSI, and she said it could be 6 billion.
Yeah, she
Right.
might be counting in the. She might be counting
Counting
in
the 4 billion?
she might be counting in the J.P. Morgan monies. Yeah,
I-
but either way,
yeah.
we'll take it. Either
But
way,
she-
we'll take it.
You
Yes.
know, are you in favor of helping the OMSI? And
Oh,
the
I've been.
OMSIs?
I'd like to think I'm one of the most active members on that. I have written, I have called, I have beat the drums on it repeatedly. In the end, in the 109th district, we have a number of state workers, and fair is fair. You can't give a raise to some state workers and not take care of your management confidentials. And you often, what's happened is you have management confidentials who are now supervising state workers in the public unions that are making more than the people who are
In
supervising
fact,
them.
some of the people who would be MCs are taking state union positions, CSEA
Precisely.
positions, because they would earn more as a CSEA
Yes.
member.
Yes, and that's not good for government.
No.
I actually was a management
about dysfunction.
confidential, so I'm
Oh, were you?
sympathetic on
Yeah.
this. Yes, and so I understand the issue. I've been very vocal, and
What
I
was your
think those
salary?
kind of
What
things.
was your salary as an MC?
I was an M4, so I was one of the top salaries. It's a
Over 100?
yes.
So you
yes,
took a pay
I took
cut?
a very serious pay cut. Yes, yes.
Wow.
There's no way, and I had to leave my job because I was.
Running.
A political
Yeah.
appointment. They've since changed the Hatch Act, but I lost 8 months of a salary to run for the position. If I
That-
didn't have a dual income, I could have never done it.
That's
My husband.
That's a old issue, but it comes up, a pay raise for the assembly people. I mean, you haven't said anything about that. I mean, they always, every year, becomes,
I haven't heard
an
much
issue,
on it.
yeah.
don't
Yes,
think
I
you
haven't
will in
heard
time.
much.
Because
yes.
it usually happens at 1 in the morning and very suddenly and without any
Yes.
fanfare, and it doesn't really. But if you look, if you're going to get a pay raise, if the legislators will get a pay raise, it's going to be a significant bump, because they're not going to get another pay raise for another. It has to be amortized out over many years.
Yes.
I think you should do what SUNY does with their tuition and just have a regular increase every couple of years.
Yeah.
You know, a
Yes, we
2%,
shouldn't-
4% increase.
Right,
And
it-
you should be gradual
Yes.
instead of just saying, all right, now we got to have a 30% increase, because we got to take care of the
Yeah.
years we didn't get and the years we're not going to get later on, and it'll all even out. And you got legislators who aren't here and who will be here, and
Yeah. Well, it's
So-
become quite the political
Yeah,
football, but I
yeah.
agree, Rabbi. I think it's still bubbling under there. And the reason is because we have state commissioners. These are the governor's appointees
Right.
now, not the legislature, but the governor's appointees who are still making in the low 100s, whereas a commissioner in New York City
Right.
is paid 185 to over 200,000 now. Now, granted, New York City is a much more expensive place to live, but often your state commissioners are quite often keeping up 2 homes because they're here and sometimes they're downstate too. So it's a real issue, as I understand, from for recruitment purposes for commissioners in high-level state jobs. So and that gets tied to the pay raises as well as some judicial pay. So it becomes quite a complicated issue. If it comes up, my goal is going to be trying to take care of the OMSI employees, these management, the
Right.
regular line state workers, the management confidentials that have not had raises.
it's just
for
well,
the
years.
thank you
Same
for your
line.
service, for one thing, because it's very nice that you were considerate enough to run and to do public service at the same time taking a pay cut, and
Well, it's the same inequality. You're talking about the same thing. You get a promotion and you get a decrease in. I mean, it doesn't sound right, really. It
I
doesn't.
have to ask, would you vote for the Assembly Speaker as you come into a new term? Have you decided? Are you on the fence?
I haven't heard anything about whether, I'm just assuming he's running. And
Well, if he does.
If he is running, I have not heard of any other competitors against him. So at this point, I don't expect any change.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I've had a good working relationship with the speaker.
Because if he gets elected Speaker, he's going to then be, over the next 2 years, be the longest tenured Speaker.
True, that's right.
He will be eclipsing Oswald D. Heck, who was from Schenectady and was a Republican, and who was the longest tenured
Good
Assembly
history.
Speaker. So now the Sheldon Silver will be the longest tenured.
I've had a good working relationship, and I haven't heard of anybody running against him.
Talking about different, like now you're, I don't know how to call you a senior member, and I don't want to call you a senior.
Sophomore member,
Yeah, I know.
Sophomore, maybe.
But just whatever, does things change? I mean, can you now, a little seniority, there's so many new people.
That's right. You're moving up in the
I'd
license plate
I'm just
numbers,
saying,
yeah.
does that happen? Hey, I have a few years behind me. I'd like another committee or a better committee chairman. Is that how it works?
Yes, there is some of that, but because I have I'm a member of such a large class. There were 17 Democrats that came in 2012, sworn in 2013, of course. So I'm such a large class, I don't see us getting any subcommittees or task forces at this point because there's just too many of us. We've lost one since then, unfortunately, a woman as well, due to an indictment, Gabriella Rosa, which is unfortunate. But so I don't see a big change, but there is a shuffling of committees. We've had so many members leave. Yeah. So I could go back, and I will go back and look. I'm very pleased with a number of the committees I sit on, such as the environmental one, the higher education, children and families. I'm pleased with the committees, but I'll take a look again and go back to my original list and reevaluate that. And so there's a chance of shifting some of those.
You should look to see these members like Joan Millman and Vito Lopez, Rafael Espinal, Alan Mizell, what committees they were on.
Oh, I always do, yes.
And then you can then say, oh, well, there's an opening.
Yes. And either way, on the committees I'm on, I will move up. And the environmental one, for instance, I had an excellent working relationship there, and it's one I want to be very vocal on. Bob
Sweeney left. He was the chairman of the Environmental Conservation.
So we'll see somebody new, and there's a lot of speculation on that too.
Yeah,
so
who do you favor?
I've heard a few different names, and of course I have no say in those decisions.
Come on, Dish.
No, Mr. Engelbright I know is interested. There's been some speculation on Deborah Glick, and Brian Kavanaugh is somebody. He's more of a junior member though, so I think that's probably less likely. But he's very active on the issues, and honestly, I have terrific working relationships with all three. All three have terrific track records, but it could be somebody out of left field as well. I mean, you really, because there's so many moving parts on other committees, that it could make for some really shuffling. And if for instance, you see that, then it could free up another committee as well.
I want to see that big board that the Speaker's office uses to
I marvel at it.
around.
I don't quite understand how it happens, but I'm very impressed is all I can say. And they do the same for parking and the same for seats in the assembly, where we sit. And yes, there's a lot of reshuffling, but it's all good.
To the Speaker?
Yes, absolutely. It's up to the Speaker, but he calls in the members and says, what committees would you like? Or he sends out a form and you put down what committees you like.
Yes.
And then his people take those suggestions, and then it's his final determination, and then you get a call and says, these are the committees you're on.
Yeah, it can take months sometimes, and there's another new large class coming in. It's not as big as the one I came in with, but it's a big one.
Yeah, it is.
It's a very big one, and
why did it take months? Does in January you have to start work?
You would think.
Maybe I shouldn't say. Well, no, it took months. I think it was over a month and a half. It was, I think, early March. Maybe it was late February when we had our assignments. Just because for everybody they move, and they have to add, and then they have to check back with the seniority, and so it's quite a reshuffling. Yeah. We'll know the chairs relatively early on, unless there's a big shakeup, but I don't anticipate that. But the members that have the real seniority, I think it is a conversation, because obviously he wants somebody to want to be on those committees, and I think sometimes the Speaker, I've heard, tries to also encourage a member to try something new, or to take on something they want. I think he tries to have some real strength on those committees, because there's some very important committees with lots of education. Kathy Nolan has done a very good job. That was 2 years of non-stop, intense legislation there to fix.
And I know you're chomping at the bit to get on that committee.
I figured I've made myself noticed and made myself heard even without being on the committee. So at one time I begged and begged. I may not at this point. I may just from outside still continue to work
Let me ask
on
you,
it.
in the final minute that we had, just
Sure.
quickly, is there an unwritten rule amongst the Capital District delegation that there's a 20-year term limit that you impose on yourself?
I'm thrilled to have survived two.
I'm just asking. I mean,
No,
'cause it seems like
no.
it seems like this area and Neil Breslin is at 18 years. This was his, next term would make him 20
Would
years.
make it 20.
So I'm just wondering if Senator Breslin might be interested in leaving, and if you were interested in moving up to the Senate.
Oh,
That's a whole
the
other-
ink is not dry
Well, you
on
know what?
yesterday's
We'll
election.
leave it at this, and the next time you come on, we'll continue this fascinating episode of the Jewish View.
Yes, but no unwritten rule that I know of on the
Okay,
20 years.
thanks.
Assemblyman Fahy, thank you very much for being on
Yes.
Jewish View. Again, Mazel Tov again for
Thank
re-election.
you.
And like Mark says, we're going to check in with you to see how everything is working down
All
at the
right,
Assembly.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
Great to see
absolutely.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, bye now.